Hi friends, welcome back to the chapter Molecular Basis of Inheritance. So in the previous session, when we went through the structure of a DNA molecule as well as RNA molecule, we came to know that DNA comparatively has a very complex structure than the RNA, and we also went through the basic properties a molecule must fulfill to play the role of genetic material, where we saw that a genetic material should be, or a genetic material should have the ability to produce its replica. ಒಂದು ಮಾಲಿಕ್ಯೂಲಿಗೆ ಅದರ ಹಿಂಬಾಲಕನಲ್ಲ, ತನ್ನಂತೆಯೇ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಬಲ್ಲ, ತನ್ನ ತರಾನೇ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಕಾಪಿಯನ್ನು ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡುವಂಥ ಎಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಇರಬೇಕು. ತನ್ನಷ್ಟೇ ಸಮರ್ಥವಾದ ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬ ಲೀಡ್ರನ್ನು ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡುವಂತಹ ಅಥವಾ ಆ ಥರ ಜನ್ರೇಷನ್ ಹೋದಾಗಿ ಹಲವು ಆ ಥರದ ಮಾಲಿಕ್ಯೂಲ್ಸನ್ನು ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ ಎಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಇರಬೇಕು. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಎಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಟು ರೆಪ್ಲಿಕೇಟ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ವಿ ಸಾ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಶುಡ್ ಬಿ ಕೆಮಿಕಲಿ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರಲಿ ಸ್ಟೇಬಲ್. It should be very stable ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು. And third thing we saw that it should provide scope for bringing the slow changes through mutations which is needed for evolution. ಕಾಲ ಕಾಲಕ್ಕೆ ಬದಲಾಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಧಾನಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗಳನ್ನು ಮ್ಯೂಟೇಷನ್ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ತಂದು ಎವಲ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಗೆ ಸ್ಪಂದಿಸುವ ಹಾಗೆ ಇರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಮತ್ತು ಮೂರನೇದಾಗಿ ಇಟ್ ಶುಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ದ ಎಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಟು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ರೆಸ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಆಫ್ ಮೆಂಡೇಲಿಯನ್ ಕ್ಯಾರೆಕ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಅಂದರೆ ತನ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಟುಕೊಂಡಿರುವಂತಹ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್ನ ಸರಿಯಾದ ಸಮಯಕ್ಕೆ ಸರಿಯಾದ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ರೆಸ್ ಮಾಡುವ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಸೊ ಬೈ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರಿಂಗ್ these four important criteria, we will analyze whether the DNA or the RNA become more suitable to play the role of genetic material. Now, almost by this time, the aspect of considering protein considering protein as a genetic material is almost ruled out, because by this time biologists were very clear that protein is playing the role of a catalyst, and we know that catalyst is not stable by any means. So in the first period itself we have studied that now a catalyst is prone to temperature changes or the pH changes, etc. That's why selecting protein as a genetic material as ruled out. So by this time, and now the strong competition remained between DNA and RNA, and we know that both of these molecules are nucleic acids, and even they share a lot of structural similarities. But when we consider these two molecules, DNA and RNA, as we went through the structure of these two, we came to know that DNA molecule is double-stranded. DNA molecule is double-stranded, whereas RNA molecule is single-stranded. Now, Watson and Crick in their double helix model very clearly explain that DNA is a very systematically arranged double stranded right handedly coiled helical structure, and these two strands are strongly joined with the help of a hydrogen bond formation between the nitrogen bases present there. That is why it is a very stable structure because of the double stranded appearance, whereas you say RNA is single stranded. Now, the single stranded appearance comparatively reduce its structural stability, and same time we also saw that in case of DNA, one of the pyrimidine is thymine. So, thymine is present as one of the pyrimidine, and in case of RNA, thymine is replaced by another type of pyrimidine called uracil. And when we compare between uracil and thymine, uracil is more reactive. Chemically, uracil is more reactive than thymine. That is why the presence of uracil in RNA further reduces the stability, and hence it becomes comparatively chemically more reactive than the thymine. And the third aspect is when we consider the structure of DNA. Now, DNA, D referring to deoxyribose. Now, the type of pentose sugar present here in DNA is deoxyribose, and which has now here you see it comparatively has one OH group less than ribose sugar which is present there in RNA. So, here you can find absence of 2 OH group, and here you can find the presence of 2 OH group. Now you see once again the presence of an extra hydroxyl group makes RNA once again more reactive. So, we know that these OH functional groups, or the presence of more OH groups keeps the molecules more reactive. Hope you are clear. Now you see, when we compare here with the structural aspect of DNA by considering mainly these three aspects, we come to know that RNA is unstable, and RNA molecule is very much liable, and it can easily undergo, or it is very reactive, and it can easily undergo changes. So, that is why now you see in one of the previous sessions we saw that RNA is also playing the role of genetic material, but only in certain viruses. And we have the example like the bacteriophages, again the tobacco mosaic virus, HIV virus, and even the COVID-19 virus. Now you see here we know that in these particular RNA viruses, since RNA is the genetic material, even these viruses are not stable. So, they can undergo mutation at a very faster rate, and even you see very soon they can change the level of pathogenicity, or sometimes even you see non-pathogenic viruses can also turn into a pathogenic one, or it can also happen in the reverse way. It clearly shows when viruses are having RNA as the genetic material, mainly because of these reasons, it is making RNA molecule very liable, and it can be degraded as well as changed, and it can go through the mutation at a faster rate. But in case of DNA, since it is double strand itself gives a lot of stability, and even these two strands are strongly bound to each other due to the presence of a hydrogen bond formation between the nitrogen bases there. So, base pairing keeps them very strongly bound to each other, which brings a lot of stability. And same time you see, in case if you heat a DNA molecule, now you see base pairs may get broken, but temporarily. Now as the condition turns back, as the condition returns into the normal stage, you see these broken hydrogen bonds can further get joined, and it can once again bring the DNA back into the normal structure. So, which itself will give stability to the DNA molecule. And same time you see absence of uracil and the presence of thymine, comparatively thymine is less reactive than the uracil, once again makes DNA very stable. And even you see, now you see once again the presence of one OH group less in a DNA molecule further keeps DNA more stable and less reactive. And once again you see Griffith's experiment very clearly proved that though he heat killed the S strain of the bacteria, though bacterial cell got killed and ruptured, few of the segments of this DNA still remained intact and retained the original information stored. And then you see, even after destroying the cell, the DNA molecule should remain intact, and it was able to get transferred into R strain, and it could bring the transformation. So, which showed DNA molecule is comparatively more stable than RNA. Now, because of this stability factor, DNA remained as one of the most suitable molecule to play the role of genetic material. Now, since it is very stable and since it is less reactive, for the storage aspect DNA is very suitable. But when it comes to the aspect of transmission of the characters and the expression, comparatively RNA is better, because you see RNA is single stranded and is very reactive and it can be expressed easily. That is why for the aspect of expression of the characters stored in a DNA, DNA is taking the help of RNA through a process called transcription. Later this RNA could help in the process of translation, that is the expression of a particular character stored in a DNA in the form of a protein. And by considering these aspects, most of the evolutionary biologists were very curious to know that which molecule initially took the role of genetic material in the beginning of the life. Now, as per the opinion of most of the evolutionary biologists, RNA was the first genetic material. RNA was the first genetic material. RNA was the first genetic material, but RNA also started playing the role of a catalyst. Now, when we consider the also started playing the role of a catalyst, and when we consider a catalyst is comparatively very reactive, and same time in the early days of the life, the very basic process of life like metabolism, like translation, splicing, etc. evolved around RNA only, this particular RNA only. Now, in the early days of the life formation, actually RNA played the major role in producing the life and in controlling the process of storing the genetic information, and also playing the role of the catalyst and controlling all important life processes like metabolism, translation, splicing, etc. as running around RNA only. But during these days, the life was very less stable or unstable because of the RNA's decreased stability and liability, and hence later few of the changes occurred in the RNA molecule, gradually changed pentose sugar from ribose sugar to deoxyribose sugar, changed one of a highly reactive pyrimidine uracil to thymine, and changed from single stranded form to double stranded form. It provided scope for the evolution of DNA out of RNA. So, in reality, DNA molecule is nothing but an upgraded and changed and modified form of RNA. That is why still the credit of starting the life processes should go to the RNA, but we have a lot of lessons to learn out of DNA. So, when it found itself weaker, to make life more stable and stronger, it went through the changes. That is why you see, realizing the mistakes and getting ourselves corrected, updated and upgraded can make us more successful even to lead the life. So, this is what a kind of a very beautiful lesson we can learn out of these two major important molecules of life, that is RNA and DNA. Okay, well, so we saw that being highly stable molecule, genetic information is stored there in DNA. Now, if once it is stored, it should be available for the expression. Now, the question is how exactly it get expressed. Now, in the beginning introduction class I have raised so few of the aspects that scientists who are very much interested in knowing how exactly genetic information is stored in the structure of a DNA. So, now once we are clear with the structure, now we came to know that by using these four letters A, G, T, C, referring to the nitrogenous bases present in the structure of a DNA, it can write the genetic informations in a coded form by arranging these 4 letters in repeated and varied sequences. That is why you see a particular information related to a specific character can be stored in a particular length of DNA by using a particular number of nitrogenous bases by arranging them in varied sequences. That is the way how things are stored, and few more aspects related to the storage or coding of or storing these informations in a coded form we will be discussing in the topic genetic code. So, Prashant sir will be discussing it. So, where you will clearly understand how exactly genetic information is stored. Now, we should see in what way this information will flow and get expressed in the form of a product. Direction of, or it is, we want to know the process of direction of flow and expression of information stored there in DNA in the form of its product. It is known as central dogma or central dogma of molecular biology. So, central dogma of the molecular biology as proposed by Francis Crick. Hope you remember Francis Crick. So, he was one of the scientists who was the part of the proposal of double helix model of DNA along with Watson. Now, he proposed the central dogma of molecular biology. What is the central dogma? Central dogma states that genetic information flow of genetic information is in this particular direction. We know that genetic information is stored in DNA molecule. It is stored in DNA molecule. The information stored in DNA molecule will flow into RNA molecule. Now, DNA is a very long molecule, has information related to different characters of an organism, but information from a particular region of this DNA corresponding to one or a few characters get copied in the form of RNA, and whatever the information got copied there in RNA later get expressed in the form of a protein. This is called central dogma. But same time you see, when DNA has the genetic information, as the cells get multiplied and as the new offsprings got born, this information should get copied repeatedly. Now, this copying will occur. Now, you see, DNA has the ability to self-generate. It is known as replication. So, it has the ability to get replicated. Replication. So, replication is nothing but biosynthesis of DNA. Hope you are clear. So, it can self-replicate. So, information get copied from DNA, parental DNA molecule to the daughter molecule. Once again to their daughter molecule. Are you clear? So, it is a self-replication. The information will flow from DNA to DNA, DNA to DNA. Okay. Now, the information present in DNA to bring its expression flow into next molecule called RNA. Now, you see DNA can be self-generated by using the parental DNA as a template. In the same way, DNA can also produce RNA, and this process is called transcription. Transcription. Now, you see the process of transcription, nothing but biosynthesis of RNA, but guided by DNA. Now, you see information stored in the DNA flow into RNA. Now, RNA as the information. Now, this RNA, in case of eukaryotic cells, DNA is located there in the nucleus, get copied into RNA there in the nucleus itself, and now this RNA travels there from the nucleus to the cytoplasm, and in the cytoplasm it will get bound with the ribosome, and the information stored there in RNA get expressed in the form of a protein, nothing but a polymer of amino acids. Now, the coded language written there in the RNA will decide the type of protein which should be synthesized in a process called translation. Translation, nothing but the process of biosynthesis of protein on the basis of the coded information stored there in RNA, and transcription is nothing but the process of biosynthesis of RNA by using the information stored there in the DNA, and the replication is nothing but the process of biosynthesis of DNA just by copying the sequences as it is present there in parental DNA, and this is the direction of flow of information to the expression in the form of a product called protein is known as central dogma of molecular biology, and the credit of explaining or proposing the central dogma goes to scientist called Francis Crick, one of the teammate of Watson, one who explained the double helix model of DNA. Now, one more aspect we should look into here is there is a slight change in the aspect of expression in case of certain viruses which are having RNA as their genetic material. So, in this case, those viruses are able to produce DNA out of RNA. DNA out of RNA. Under such condition, the process is called reverse transcription. So, now for example, you see in case of HIV, so it is a RNA virus, and as they enter into human cells, it inserts only RNA as its genetic material into the human cell, but we are using RNA molecule as a template, it synthesizes DNA. Later, that particular DNA can further synthesize RNA as well as proteins required for its functioning inside a host cell. Hope you clear. Only under such condition we come across the concept of reverse transcription, which is observed only in case of RNA viruses. Now we saw how exactly genetic information is stored in a DNA molecule. Once the storage aspect is clear, the next aspect is how exactly this stored information got copied, because as we discussed in the introduction class, we came to know that every organism, every single organism is basically represented by a single cell. So, in case of we human beings, or in case of most of the multicellular organisms, those reproduce sexually, the origin of that particular individual took place with the formation of a single diploid cell called zygote. And later you see this zygotic cell undergoes repeated division followed by differentiation to produce a group of cells, later tissues, later into the organs or into the organ system, and finally a complex organism. But all this journey started from single cell, and that particular single cell with its DNA had the entire information needed to bring the expression of all different characters of that particular organism. But you see, later this single zygotic cell undergoes a repeated division and forms thousands to trillions of cells altogether. But when all these cells get divided, now during the cell division we know that parental cell gets divided and it will produce 2 daughter cells in case of mitosis or 4 daughter cells in case of meiosis, but all these daughter cells are produced out of the parental cell. That means during the division this parental cell should also get its DNA or the genetic material copied, and the copy should be passed into the daughter cells. That is why while copying should be precise. No changes should occur. If any error occur during the copying, the offspring born won't be similar to the parent. That is why to keep the constancy in the transfer of genetic information, the copying aspect should be very precise. That is why the next question arose before the biologists was how exactly copying is done in case of DNA. Now, soon after proposing the structure of DNA as a double helical model by Watson and Crick, they have also hypothesized and proposed the possible pattern of DNA copying, and they called this particular pattern of DNA copying as a semi-conservative one. Same Watson and Crick proposed semi-conservative model of replication, semi-conservative model. Now, what do you mean by semi-conservative mode of replication? Semi, half. So, here during the process of replication, half should be retained and rest of the half should be synthesized. Now, why Watson and Crick proposed this particular pattern of replication? Because while explaining the double helical model of the DNA, we came to know that one of the strand of the DNA will get paired with another strand which is complementary to it. So, for example, you see, if one of the strand is like this, for example 3' to 5' polarity, and if one of the strand sequence is like this A, G, T, C, we can easily predict the opposite strand, because in Cheragov's rule he explained that C always pairs with the G and T always pair with the A and G once again with the C and A once again there with the T, and anti-parallel. If it has a 5' here, the opposite strand should have 3', and if you have 3' here, the opposite strand should have 5'. That means, if once you know the sequence of one of the strand, you can predict the sequence of other strand. That is why they proposed the possibility of these two strands getting separated during the time of replication, and you get two different strands, two different single strands, and by considering these two single strands as a template strand, it could synthesize a new strand complementary to it, or it could use that particular strand as a guiding strand, and it can guide the polymerization through which it could synthesize its complementary strand. And we have one more template strand. It can also guide the synthesis of a new strand in the similar pattern. As a result, you see, out of one DNA molecule, you could produce two DNA molecules, and those two DNA molecules remain exactly the replica of the parental molecule, wherein in those two daughter molecules, one of the strand will remain the parental and the other one will be newly synthesized non-parental. That is why this type of replication is called semi-conservative replication. So, possibility of this type of replication proposed by Watson and Crick. But they were not able to experimentally prove it, and the chance of proving DNA replication as a semi-conservative one goes to two scientists called Matthew Meselson and Franklin Stahl. Matthew Meselson and Franklin Stahl. Proved semi-conservative replication in the year 1958. Meselson and Stahl conducted an experiment to prove DNA replication as a semi-conservative one. So, during their experiment, they have cultured Escherichia coli bacteria in a culture media containing ammonium chloride salt in 2 different batches. So, one of the culture media had N15. N15 is heavier isotope of nitrogen, and in the another culture they used N14, which is the lighter isotope of the nitrogen. So, in one of the batch ammonium chloride NH4Cl salt contained heavier isotope and other one had lighter isotope N14. We should not confuse it as a radioactive element. They are not a radioactive element, but they are heavier and lighter isotopes. Now, they repeatedly cultured Escherichia coli bacteria, E. coli bacteria in a culture medium contained N15, the heavier isotope in the salt. As a result, what happened? Due to the repeated culture, we know that nitrogen bases are the important components in the DNA molecule, even in other molecules like proteins. Now, in that particular culture batch, all the Escherichia coli bacteria received heavier isotope of N15. Okay. Now, in another culture, as they cultured it in a lighter isotope containing salt, DNA as well as all the nitrogen containing components in the Escherichia coli got lighter N14 nitrogen isotope. As a result, when they isolated the DNA from the first culture batch and second culture batch, and then when they centrifugated in cesium chloride gradient, cesium chloride density gradient, they got DNA molecules sedimented there in the bottom in case of a first batch culture, since it had heavier isotopes. And in the second batch, when they have separated the DNA molecules and then centrifugated it in cesium chloride density gradient, they got the band there on the top, since nitrogen was the lighter isotope. So, in this way they could differentiate between the DNA molecule having the heavier isotope and lighter isotope. Okay. Now, they have applied this concept in proving replication, DNA replication as a semi-conservative one. Okay. In what way? Now, as I mentioned, in the first batch, repeatedly they have cultured Escherichia coli bacteria in a salt containing heavier isotope N15. Now, so let us consider N15 with red color, just for understanding purpose. Now, you see, all the initial Escherichia coli bacteria had heavier isotopes of nitrogen. Now, then he transferred all these Escherichia coli bacteria having heavier isotope of nitrogen in the DNA into next culture media which had N14 nitrogen isotope in the salt. Okay. Now, if it is a semi-conservative type of replication, all the Escherichia coli entered into this culture media had N15 only. If it is semi-conservative, these two strands of N15 should get separated, and for the purpose of a synthesis of a new strand, only N14 nitrogen containing salt is available. That is why the complementary strand produced should be a DNA with lighter nitrogen, and it should occur in this particular manner. And if you continue it for one more generation, now you see all these two strands from both the DNA molecule should get separated. As a result, we can get them separated in the form of one with the heavier, other one with the lighter. Here also one with the heavier and other one with the lighter. Now you see, heavier is going here and one lighter is coming here. Another lighter from this molecule is coming here and the heavier is going here. Now it will appear, now you see, it can be separated in this way. Now it can be separated, now you see, in this way. Okay. Now once again, they cultured in N14 salt media only. As a result, what happened? You see, only N14 is available. That is why this strand with the N15 should get N14 only. This, you see, the next strand already has N14 only, and once again it gets only N14. Similar way here also, but here it received N15, but the new strand becomes N14 only, since the media salt has only lighter isotope N14 here. Hope you are clear. Now with this assumption, he cultured in two batches. Now Escherichia coli bacteria takes only 18 minutes to get multiplied once. Escherichia coli bacteria gets multiplied once in 18 minutes. Now that is why what exactly they have done is, after 20 minutes they have separated bacteria from here and isolated its DNA and got it centrifugated in cesium chloride density gradient, and they got centrifugated it, and once again they continued the culture for one more generation. So he got first generation here, then he continued for the second generation. In the next 18 minutes it can once again get multiplied and increase its generation double. Now here also he isolated DNA from this bacteria and got it centrifugated in cesium chloride density gradient. As a result, what happened? Then he examined all these DNAs observed in the form of bands. Now, when he had taken DNAs, before introducing them into a culture media with the N14, the lighter isotope of nitrogen, it had all the DNA molecules with the heavier isotope of nitrogen, that is N15. That's why when he isolated all the DNAs from this particular batch Escherichia coli, he got only one band of DNA, but it was there in the bottom, indicating DNA molecules are heavier one. Good. Now, after taking them into N14 lighter isotope containing nitrogen salt media, and in the first generation when he isolated DNA and centrifugated in cesium chloride density gradient, once again he got only one band, but with a difference in its position. Instead of getting the band there on the bottom, here he got the band in the middle. Why in the middle? Now you see, it is not there in the top because both these strands are not having the lighter one. It's not in the bottom because both these strands are not heavier. These molecules at this particular generation, the first generation, all the DNA daughter molecules, all the DNA molecules present in the first progeny has a hybrid DNA, one with the N15 heavier isotope of nitrogen and the other one with the N14 the lighter isotope of the nitrogen. As a result, he got the DNA band there in the middle in the intermediate position, proving that during the DNA replication it will retain one older strand and it will synthesize the other one as a new strand, and hence this particular step itself proved that DNA replication is a semi-conservative one. And as they continued into the second generation, it once again proved, and you see the possibility there in the second generation is, here we have only 2 N15 containing DNA strands, and as all these 4 strands get separated here, now you see there will be only 2 N15 older strands available. Rest of the strand, you see these 2 strands available to the next generation are N14 only, and once again media has a N14 only. That's why you see the 50% of the bacteria should have N15, N14 DNA, and the next 50% should be N14, N14 the lighter version of DNA only. As a result, we get, you see, we get 50% hybrid bands there in the middle and 50% lighter bands there on the top. And finally, this once again proved that DNA replication is a semi-conservative one. So, in this way, Michelson and Stahl were very successful in proving the hypothesis of Watson and Crick, that is DNA replication is a semi-conservative one. Michelson and Stahl experiment proved that DNA replication is a semi-conservative one there in Escherichia coli. Now, it once again raised whether it will remain the same in all different organisms. That is why one more scientist called Taylor and his colleagues once again conducted similar kind of experiment in the year 1958, but this time they have used radioactive thymidine. They have used radioactive thymidine, and got the DNA labeled, and here they have used a plant called Vicia faba. So, it is a kind of bean popularly known as faba beans. Now, here they got the DNA of the chromosomes labeled using radioactive thymidine, and in the next generation, as they changed the media from radioactive thymidine to the normal one, they got the chromosomes like this. So, in the first generation, half of the chromosome, that means in a sister chromatid, one of the chromatid had radioactive thymidine and other one had the normal one. And we know that in the structure of a chromosome, the chromosomal structure is made up of DNA only. So, it once again proved that the pattern of replication is semi-conservative, not only in Escherichia coli, but also in all different organisms. So, in this way, experiments conducted by Messelson and Stahl initially proved that DNA replication is a semi-conservative one, and works of Taylor and colleagues using radioactive thymidine in Vicia faba, a kind of beans plant, that the pattern of replication is a semi-conservative one.